So let me just make sure Jamie is in the house before I introduce him. There he is. Perfect. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice little break. We've had a beautiful day. It's the 17th of March. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We have followed an opening with Walter Paul and heard the beautiful story of Wajausen, the windbird. And then we met two speakers from Nova Scotia who are working on a Wajausen, or have worked on a Wajausen wind project that is here in my neck of the woods, eastern New Brunswick. But the partnership on this project was with Tobique First Nation. And now we have the pleasure of meeting Mr. Jamie Gorman from Tobique First Nation, who is a resource developer there. And Jamie, I'd love to offer you tobacco virtually, and thank you for joining us in this space. And just take a second to acknowledge that we're all coming together, which is so fantastic. We're coming together from the Passamaquoddy territory, the Mi'kmaq territory, and of course the ancestral territory of the Wolastoqey. And we're honored to have you joining us from Tobique, and know that our host school is Southern Victoria. So it's great to see students from Southern Victoria with us, and they've given us the program skeleton that we're following. We're following their bell schedule, and students from outside the territory are able to join us. So one advantage to being virtual, we can host a whole lot more students. So with no further ado, I would love to welcome Purcupine, Jamie, to the screen. And Jamie, I'm going to share with the group, just before you start, I do have some aerial images that you might want to refer to. There's the beautiful Wolastoqey, or the Wolastoq, pardon me, the Wolastoq. And would you like me to keep those on the screen? Those
Sure.
are
Sure.
44 and 66 aerial shots of
the
Tobique
Tobique Dam.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So
sure.
if you want, I can leave that on while you speak.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Give me some inspiration. Okay.
So welcome.
I start? Okay. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Pamela. You know what I mean? This is a great opportunity, as we're adapting and adjusting, to the pandemic and getting together virtually. We're still getting used to interacting virtually, but I do find that there are some benefits. And like Pamela said, we're able to talk to more people at the same time than it is to get, people in a room. So, so Kwe, Nildali was Madawas, Jamie Gorman, Najayal Nilnagutcook. So yeah, my name is Madawas was my, it means porcupine. So when my great grandmother, when I was born, my hair stuck up quite crazily. And so I've kept that name, but my name is Jamie Gorman. I'm from Tobique First Nation, and I am what is called an RDCC, so a Resource Development Consultation Coordinator. So I represent Tobique through our broader organization, which is WNNB, which stands for the Wolastoqey Nation of New Brunswick. So WNNB is a technical body which sort of helps us, I guess, let me slow it. So consultation flows out of the duty to consult. So anytime governments and proponents are proposing projects which are going to happen in Wolastoqey territory, there's an obligation to consult us, because a lot of these projects will potentially have impacts on our asserted Aboriginal and treaty rights. So some of these sites, similar with the wind project in the Wajausen Wind Project in Sussex, so it takes up Crown land to build these turbines, so it becomes Crown lands that we're not able to use in ways that we had done in the past. So these proponents are then obligated to consult with us so that we can try and mitigate some of the impacts to what these projects have to our rights. Let me see. So yeah, anytime that there's projects proposed in the territory that have the potential to impact our rights to hunt, fish, gather, etc., we have a team of technical staff at WNMB, which help us sort of vet the proposals for the impact. So we have ethnohistorians, we have GIS experts, we have fishery experts, forestry advisors, lawyers. And so we will get a proposal from a project and we will analyze that proposal for impact. So we reach out to a variety of experts as well as members in our community who use the land or have done ceremonies in land, and we go have conversations with them and we ask them how they're using it. We quantify all this information, we submit it back, and then we work in partnership and in collaboration with the proponents or government to try and minimize the impact. So you see here. Okay, so one of the best tools we use, and it was raised in the previous presentation, are traditional land use studies. So traditional land use studies document both our sort of historic and our current use in the area, where the project will happen. We keep a database of other use and we're constantly adding to it. So we interact. Oh yeah, I guess I should know. We interact and so on a couple hundred files currently. So we're doing everything from big picture on forestry legislation, fisheries. You guys might be aware of the situation that's happening in Nova Scotia with the moderate livelihood. So we have a similar, we're dealing with government DFO on big picture issues to try and, as you know, we're signatories to peace and friendship treaties, which never surrendered, ceded, or gave up land. And, it hasn't been exactly honored, and so we're working to just try and improve how things were done in the past going forward, where we're more mindful and respectful of each other's presence on the territory. I will say, with natural forces and the Woodjousen Wind Project, it has been a really progressive relationship. It's really started from a place of mutual respect. We are co-owners in this project, and I'm speaking as a Tobique member. So our language has been used, the roads have been named in the language around the project, our art is on the project, and we're economic beneficiaries of these projects. And I will have to, I deal, like I say, with a couple hundred files, and natural forces has probably been one of the best ones we've dealt with. As we know, reconciliation is a word you're probably hearing quite often, but it's a process. We're trying to get better. We're always trying to improve our sort of interaction with government, with industry. We have some contentious relationships with some of the proponents in our territory. We're not big fans of how forestry is done. As First Nations people and where we're coming from, we're trying to ensure that the ways we're using the land now don't impact future generations' ability to benefit from the land. So we want to make sure that the decisions we're making now don't make it worse for our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren down the line. And some of the way the economic models are set up, it's pretty short-term thinking. So they are modifying forests, for instance, into spruce plantations, more monoculture, which has impacts to fish and to animals and to humans, ideally too, right? Like a diverse, resilient forest is probably going to be, in light of climate change, will probably be more beneficial to us going forward. So we want to make sure that forestry management decisions are made with that sort of thinking in mind. But as you know, we have a big company that has a vested interest in keeping the status quo. So like I say, we have contentious relationships, but we also have positive relationships. And green energy is really one of these new progressive relationships.
Jamie, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Just, there are a few in this session that didn't get to hear Meg and Meg last period.
Oh,
Could
okay,
you
I'm
just
sorry.
take 30 seconds and maybe introduce how that partnership, really important partnership between an Indigenous and a non-Indigenous rights holder came together, and how you were involved, and then carry on. It might just set the stage for students who don't know what Wojawsin project is.
Wojawsin. Okay, so yeah, there was a program, a LORES program, and forgive me, I don't know the exact acronym, but it was Local Operator Energy. It was a proposal anyways for First Nations to take partnership with a wind project. Tobique happened to win the bid, so Natural Forces and Tobique came together, and through that interaction, they actually, so Wojawsin is it's wind, or the great wind animal, as Walter was saying in the first one. So Wojawsin is the wind blowing. So that became the name of the project. So right off the bat, it's just a great start. The recognition of language, where Wolastoqey language is severely endangered. There's probably less than 100 fluent speakers left. So we are constantly working to ensure that our language is out there, being used and being recognized. So we're, this was a great start. So when we, the whole project is it's framed in language, it's Wojawsin. So yes, this was a direct partnership with Tobique. So even though I am a member of Tobique, like I interacted through the Natural Forces and Wojawsin Wind Project through our parent organization, which is the Wolastoqey Nation in New Brunswick. So that's the organization that takes Natural Forces proposal. So they have to do what is called an environmental impact assessment. So they've got to assess their potential impacts to birds, to plants. They have to do archaeological to ensure that, if there is potentially an archaeological site, that is taken care of, because obviously they're doing some construction to put the pads up and stuff like that. So they do an archaeological analysis, they do the birds, bats, noise, disturbance. So we get all those documents sent to our technical office, and we have an EIA coordinator at our Gordon Gray from Kingsclear. And so he goes through this document, and then he starts highlighting the potential impacts. And one of the ways we quantify what the impacts are through what is called the traditional land use study. And the traditional land use study is it's one of my favorite things to work on. So what we do is we ask and interview people where they hunt, where they fish, where they gather, where they do ceremony. Hold on, let me pull this up so I can speak to this better. So land and resource studies are often completed as part of the environmental review in order to clearly demonstrate how the project will impact land-based rights, such as our hunting, fishing, cutting wood, harvesting of plants, along with our occupation. Recommendations are then typically presented on the land and resource use study for how to mitigate, which means to lessen or eliminate the impacts to our rights. So we discuss how the project may currently impact, how it will future impact, and then we provide a list of recommendations. And this is where our relationship with Natural Forces moves to the head of the line, because they really took all our recommendations to heart and they incorporated them. We wanted language involved. We wanted to, let me see, what else did we do? Oh, sorry, I'm a little nervous. It feels weird knowing I'm speaking to a lot of people.
I totally get it. You're talking, but you don't know who you're talking to, and it's a little disconcerting.
Yeah,
you shared with me those maps, those GIS points, and how they're, I mean, you couldn't share the reel, but sharing those sites and creating a living document of where ceremonies are taking place and where burial grounds are is something I think we're
Oh,
all
yes. Okay.
fascinated. Yeah.
Sure. I can talk about that. So, yeah. So if I back up, so we started in about 2017, April of 2017 was when we started formulating. So Energy East at the time was a big pipeline that was coming through the province from Alberta and was going to go all the way to St. John. As part of that proposal, we were able to do a traditional land use study for the whole province. So we've got a map, and we interviewed about 300 people with the heaviest land users. So we have a map of all of New Brunswick, and parts of Quebec and Maine too, but only we'll focus on New Brunswick for now. So where everybody's gotten fish, grouse, where they've found archaeological sites, where they've done ceremonies. And so we have this big living GIS map basically. And so Mac to Quack is another project that was pretty big. So there's a Mac to Quack refurbishment. So they want to, at one point there was talk about removing the dam. So we did another study from Mac to Quack. So we're constantly adding information through these traditional land use studies into this big database. So this becomes our sort of first layer of vetting. So we get a project. So Coles Island wants a new bridge. They want to put a new bridge in. So we'll lay our map down. And then we'll say, okay, so this is where the impacts will be. Well, we see that somebody's getting Giller's Lusk or muskrat root there. And someone else is sweetgrass picking nearby here. And someone else is cant through here. So we, say, hey, listen, can we make sure that we move the, don't put the bridge here. Maybe you can move it a little over here. So this information is always used in all our interactions with every one of our files. So we've got this, like I say, it's a really cool map, but because it's, a lot of people's, don't really want to give up their best fishing sites or their best hunting sites or where they're gathering medicines because they're worried that other people might go there and fish it out or pick too many plants. So we have confidentiality requirements where we're not really able to show it. So, but we do end up giving a map to the proponents, but instead of it being a really strict geographic point, we just make a bigger icon. So you couldn't really distinguish where it is, but roughly shows where it is. But like I say, we're constantly looking to fill this map with use. You might be aware that we have had a declaration of title. So the reason we've had to make a title declaration, which means so we're claiming that our Aboriginal title has never been lost, that we should have a say over how development is done in the province, that it can't just be unilaterally or just decided by the province or the feds, that they have to make decisions in collaboration with us. So, and that hasn't always been respected. So we've had to, as you might be aware, and I'm not sure, but in Chishkolton, so in BC, in 2018, the first declaration of Aboriginal title was recognized. So they have now a court-recognized right to determine how projects are done in their territory. And so we are aiming to do the same thing, but these title cases take 20 years, 30 years. So in the meantime, we are hoping to work with more progressive proponents, and so partners and people who are proposing projects in the territory to be mindful of our worldviews, which is more connected to sustainability and not so much short-term economic interests as it is for long-term sustainable economic interests. So some projects we're not going to approve of, some are like Sisson Mine, where it leaves this huge open pit mine, which will have contaminated acid leach water, which will have to be treated for 200-300 years. The size of this pit is probably from, if anybody's in Fredericton, probably from the Region Mall all the way over to the Walmart on the north side, and it would be 400 or 500 feet deep, and it would have to constantly be treated. So, projects like this are a bit short-sighted, we feel. So, there's been a lot of opposition to Sisson Mine. So we're looking to work with people who want to do more sustainable green energy projects, longer term, circular economy. I don't know if this is a term that's been floated, but we, we're creating a lot of waste, we're creating a lot of garbage. We want to build things in a way so that they last longer, that they can be upcycled, reused, so that there's less sort of cost to the environment, to the earth going forward. So, and this is where our partnership with Natural Forces is one of these cool progressive. So we use this in conversations we have. So we're also dealing with some quarries that are some gypsum mines that are being done down in the south of the province. And we're using lessons learned from our partnerships with something like Natural Forces, to show other companies how that they can interact with us and work with us. So
super. I have a question from the audience if you'd like to.
Awesome.
Take
Absolutely. That would be great. Yes.
Okay. This is personal too, because it comes from my home. We did a big project on the Petitcodiac River. So this is a class asking the question, and the construction of the new bridge. So April 5th, Jamie, we will lose access to Moncton from Riverview via the old causeway over the Petitcodiac River, and we'll all be funneling via Gunnisville Bridge. Do you, Jamie, know, or could you ask, Pamela, could I ask if there was a study done with consultation on this project with you or another First Nation? Great question.
That's great. And I assume the Petitcodiac, they're trying to restore that back to a more natural flow. So they took that causeway out so that it will have, but I believe that is in Mi'kmaq territory. So we, even though we're all in New Brunswick and we'll get notifications to these projects, we do defer to the, so this would be MTI, Mi'kmaq been open. So they're the body that sort of represents Mi'kmaq interest on this. So any consultation that would have happened on the Petitcodiac causeway removal and the bridge removal would have went through them. So yeah, we're mostly focused on the western side of New Brunswick.
That's a great question for Steve, who represented MTI yesterday. So to that asker, I do have a connection. Fort Folly is also down here, nestled into the corner of the territory, and huge into salmon recovery.
Salmon recovery, yes.
Yeah, and we've got over 50 years of siltation buildup because of the causeway. It's going to be amazing to see that river restore.
I know, it's really exciting. Our analog to that would have been Mactaquac. So like I say, initially there was a potential chance at Mactaquac. So not all the Westway, but the majority of the Westway had pushed to have option one, which was removing the Mactaquac Dam. So we were starting to look, what does that look like? Can we remove Mactaquac without the other 5 dams? And we've lost the ability to fish salmon in the Willistic River, and a big reason for that is the dams. And as I look at this, the Tobique Dam on my screen, salmon are having a really hard time re-establishing in the St. John River, and a lot of money and a lot of research is being spent to try and ensure that the salmon are coming back. And Fort Folly is, I heard, involved in a really cool salmon restoration project. So luckily for them, on the rivers near their community, there is no dam. So they're actually rearing fish on the backside of Grand Manan, you know what I mean? And they're repopulating this river, and they're getting increasing returns, and it's really cool. So
it is,
like I say, and someone I seen a chat thing come up, partnerships are so important that, we recognize we're all here together. So we have to work together. We must work together, and we need to communicate with each other. We need to, operate in a respectful space. And, in this role in consultation, this is about establishing relationships with people and respectful relationships, and being able to express your frustrations, in a respectful way. And ideally you're working towards solutions that both parties can live with, so that's something we're constantly doing. And you know, it's not always easy. You know, there's, like I say, the forestry is a big issue, fisheries are a big issue, carbon capture and climate change is really a big pressing issue. So we're doing a lot on the New Brunswick water strategy, New Brunswick climate action plan. So we're reviewing those to see how do we incorporate in this and how do we prepare for bigger flood events, hotter, drier summers, or is our infrastructure good? If we're going to be getting huge rain events, are our pipes big enough to handle the outflow? So it'll have all these implications. And, as we see in the communities below Fredericton, Majorville and stuff, there's been sort of more currents of flooding and stuff down there. So these are all sort of areas and aspects that we're involved in. Is there any other questions? I'd love to answer questions.
There's this is fun. The flooding issue, I think of the Wolastoq and coming from that area, growing up in that area and seeing the floodplain and seeing the flood maps just blow me away. Do we take on, as youth sitting here in the audience, a plan to mitigate for this or to adapt to this or to do both? Is the writing on the wall? Climate is changing, and it has for millennia, but the rate that it is changing is really throwing us
definitely
into a lather, into a sense of urgency. Can we control it? And I believe that we can mitigate for sure and plan to adapt. And down here, for those of you on the Petty-Kodiak, look at what happened over 100 years ago when the Saxby Gale blew through, and nobody believed that it was going to happen, and it killed people in its path, and the flood level is still marked along our shores of the Petty, where the Petty-Kodiak rose to, and it's expected another 100-year flood. It's expected anytime, and they believe that it will rise to the top step of City Hall. So for those in the Moncton Riverview area, it just gives you an idea of where should we be developing, and what shouldn't we be doing? Should we be taking the abattoirs and the dikes down so we can recapture some of that water that's going to come barreling up that Bay of Fundy funnel into the Petty-Kodiak? Great questions. Corey Herc's on the line and is offering to the chat connections with the Petty-Kodiak Watershed Alliance. And we do have connections with Fort Folly, and Jamie, you're bang on. They're raising humongous. Students have had a chance to put these salmon back into Salmon River, actually, in the Bay of the Fundy National Park, and re-enter them into the very streams that they were reared in, and spawn. And it's beautiful partnership with Cook's Aquaculture and Fort Folly and Fundy National Park. So thank you for that comment. That partnerships are critical. And I have to, this isn't my show, so tell me to shut up, but I just would be honored if you could speak to, you mentioned muskrat root, and speaking to friends from Kingsclear First Nation, and I know it grows in Tobique too, how medicinally important it is, and how putting in a dam and flooding that particular plant, and you could talk about black ash too if you're comfortable.
Sure.
But what does it do to the culture of First Nation peoples who are relying on riparian areas and burial sites that were never all the way up to you from Kingsclear, were never lifted and resituated, but many of the colonial sites were. So I'll just zippo the lippo, and you can speak to the dam. Yeah.
I mean, this is a big, I really feel the dams have had a detrimental impact on our culture. Um, Partly, we have a lot of mills, lumber mills that are on the dam. So the pollution in the river. So the Wolastoq stands for like the good and the bountiful river, and we're Wolastoqiyik, or people of this good and bountiful river. But the bounty of this river is less now. We have no salmon, and we've done studies on contamination in fiddleheads and Gillis rusk. I mean, in muskrat root. So these are bioaccumulators like muskrat root. So it's growing right on the edge of the water. So if there are heavy metals and other things that are coming into the water, so now people are less likely to get their medicines from this upper St. John. It might be a little cleaner down below Mactaquac where there's a more flushing effect. But for us above Mactaquac, we do notice that there's less people using medicines from the Wolastoq. We can still get them from tributaries in the cleaner Tobique, or, where the rivers are a little cleaner, but that we, as you see in that map, we're right at the mouth of where the Tobique and the Wolastoq meet. So we have very few, and this part of the reasons why this was chosen, or, this was a super bountiful spot. There used to be so many salmon in this, just below that red arrow. There are a bunch of pools there. There used to be wild grapes and butternuts and beech nuts. All those got flooded, eroded out basically, because once they flooded the upper part, and then during the spring freshet, so it just eroded all the islands. There used to be a bunch of islands there below the dam going down to the thing. And those used to be places where, my mom speaks about, her mom being able to drink the water right from the dam. You know what I mean? They would go down there, get their salmon, they drink their water right there, they get their food. We don't have that ability anymore. This is, the Micmac side is luckily their Restigouche and Miramichi, and those rivers are a little more productive. They still have salmon, they still have Gaspereau and eels, and because of the dam, we don't have eels anymore up here. So we have some, yeah, we don't have as much as we used to have, and we're trying to improve the conditions in the river. So part of what we do is a lot of these agricultural, like potato farming is pretty big up here. But a lot of them were able to put their fields right next to the river. So instead of there being a buffer of trees, which could sort of filter any, so what happens is potatoes get blight and all these things. So they spray stuff to keep the potatoes safe. But when we get a rainstorm and there's no trees in between the farm and the river, those things, obviously everything flows to the river because those are the lowest points. You know what I mean? So the river is quite contaminated, so we're looking to say, let's please start planting trees. Let's do some riverbank restoration projects. I was involved in the riverbank restoration project in Tobique. So the dam has created a bunch of erosion on our side. So we lost, roads, houses. So I did 3 years. We did this whole St. John side. You can't really see it on the map, but it would be sort of just below that bottom blue line. And one of the cool things is we met with these people called natural asset managers.
Oh.
So they're people who come in and tell you, you should leave, 30% of your trees, leave your low-lying wet areas when you're building new subdivisions, stuff. And basically they're telling you how to build on the environment in a way that doesn't create issues. So, and it's, so there's towns downriver that are using these natural asset managers to help them plan their expansions. And I think that's a really cool evolution, or, a way of looking at development, so how do we build in conjunction with our environment in a way that doesn't create issues going forward? So, you wouldn't mow everything down, put your streets and your infrastructure and build up. You would build less, keep things up. Your trees provide shade and cooling, so your power bills are a little less. There's all these sort of other added benefits that happen through this. So, we're looking to improve the conditions in our territory as much as possible. We obviously erosions, flooding, like there's been some talk about, the way clear cuts have impacts on flooding, so we're saying, can we lessen the size of the clear cuts? Let's let's just be more mindful of how we're doing business, so that, because somebody's paying the price. If it's not now, or it's in a few years, or if you're further down the road, and we can't keep pushing those costs to the future. You know what I mean? And this is, where we come in how we're trying to express our worldview about, let's make decisions that are mindful of future generations. So, this all weaves into the work we do. I'm a bit of a rambler here, but I really wanted to emphasize to the students of how many opportunities there are in environmental science work. We're constantly growing, from WNB, we're 30 some employees now. We've got environmental monitors, water biologists, and, so we want to do a lot of internships with high school students just coming out of high school before they go into university. Let's give them some exposure in some of these environmental, so that they could participate in the bird studies and the plant studies and the archaeology. And maybe they find something that triggers their interest. They want to study it further, and then they can come back and contribute. So yeah, is there any other questions I can?
It's awesome. I'm keeping my eye on the chat not to miss anybody. And I see here that students are studying food webs and food chains. And I thought, this is perfect, because not only are partnerships important within humanity, but also within ecology. And you mentioned bioaccumulation, and one little spoke out of the wheel affects the whole bike, right? And if one thing's affected, then the next level, the next trophic level is impacted. And it just reminds us that really connections are so important. And we can even look at it, students sitting here in the audience, the bell rings and you go to another subject, and then the bell rings and you go to another subject, and we think, oh, I'm good at that subject and I'm bad at that subject. Yet really life isn't siloed like that, is it?
No.
You really will work with, exactly, and those teachers working so hard to hone in on those skills in each of those classes are really working to bring you to a place where you can communicate, you can look at the land and appreciate your environment, but maybe build a wind turbine with your physics skills. But you need to be able to appreciate all the disciplines, and maybe in multiple languages, those disciplines. So it warms my heart to see partnerships come up in the chat and throughout the day. And we're learning so much, Jamie, from just chatting organically online with students, that there really isn't room for silos. And if we can break them down in education and have youth out in their respective watersheds and communities learning what's going on, who's working in the community to help mitigate or to help, act on climate or poverty, or you name it, make those connections. That's where the learning is going to take place. And it's not on that test, and it's not about memorizing content. And it has a place because it helps a teacher understand what you're understanding, but talking to people like Jamie and Megan and Walter and our guests that are coming on brings it to life and brings it to place and brings it to community. And I am passionate about education transforming so that the classroom, as Walter said 3 hours ago, his classroom was the Wolastoq.
Yes.
And maybe my classroom is the Petty Kodiak, and,
Yeah,
and so on
yes.
and so forth. And it's
Land-based education is big. It's something we're pushing, and the pandemic sort of brought that into a thing that, like my kids were in school, like when they were out of school. And so getting us out, I did an environmental monitoring program. So we would do a little bit of classwork in the morning, but in the afternoon, we'd go out and apply what we learned. So this is, we did a lot of plant identification, tree identification, learning topography and all these sort of things, note taking, you know what I mean? But we found that people were a lot more engaged when they're actually able to go out and apply their learning almost immediately, you know what I mean? Like I was a troubled student. I had a hard time staying attention in class the whole day, and so I'm hoping that we're more, just aware that people multiple learning styles, but that, I'm a really big proponent of land-based education, right? I just feel that we're bringing in and having these discussions out on the land and able to express and show people what we're talking about, it sticks a little better. It's, like, as you say, you go from class to class to class, and your English, your math, your history and all that. It's hard to keep all that in your head, and like, where does it all fit in? So if you're able to go out and apply stuff, so, I believe the land is our teacher, it was our, one really cool thing that's coming through that I just wanted to raise that I noticed in my notes was this Canada Nature Fund. So in New Brunswick, they're committed to protecting 10% of the areas. So right now we're going out looking at areas for significant areas we'd like to protect as protected natural areas. So they're not mined and they're not logged. But Canada has made a commitment to do 25% by 2025. And there's talk that there'll be 30% by 2030. So, protecting land and going out and knowing your land, knowing what should be protected, what conservation values are out there are super important. And obviously, wetlands are really important. Watersheds are really important. You know what I mean? Everybody lives in a watershed, no matter where you are.
That's right.
There is a watershed that is for you. So to take part in that and to, in whatever way you can, contribute to it being better. Like, we're in relationships with our land as well as we are with each other. We're in relationship with birds, with the animals, with insects, with soils. I know gardening was big this year. A lot of people took up pandemic gardens.
Yes.
And realizing, so these are all, great things in my opinion. And I hope to see that there's just more interaction with the natural environment, because people then treat it better. If we're siloed in our house or in schools and we're not out on the land, we're less likely to protect it or, be concerned. So being out there, being on your rivers, canoeing, fishing, whatever it is that you do for fun. But anyways, I am really grateful for this opportunity to speak to everybody, and I wish you well on your learning journey. So
thank you so much, Jamie. I just will take we've taken our 45 minutes beautifully, and I think you've planted seeds, no pun intended, into our minds and our hearts. And I'll end with just, you're welcome to stay on. And it's been a pleasure to meet you. I think the audience needs to know that this was a complete phone introduction until today. And it's been a pleasure, Jamie. And I think I wish you all the best moving forward, but you can't leave just yet because I've got a chat. Oh, look, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Students and teachers are thanking, and I think enjoyed the interview. It was great.
Great. Chiwaliwan, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll stay on, I think.
Oh, good. So that was wonderful. And I think if classes are moving back and forth, that's fine. I am going to just offer a tiny break and bring to the screen Bernie Daigle at 11:55, and Bernie's going to introduce us to the Wabanaki Forest through the lens of some sacred species and the dichotomous key. So we look forward to meeting Bernie. Some of you already have met him in the past. So thanks again. Shout out to Purcupine and all the classes that joined. And if you stick around, we'll see you back here at, did I say 11:55? So almost noon. Thank you. And feel free to continue if you have questions or thanks in the chat, and speakers will see that as well.